one of the most common items that you'll find at like witchy metaphysical stores is something like that. If you've looked into it at all, you would probably, if it's not labeled, you would probably think of these as smudging sticks. And there's no eloquent way for me to get this out in the open. These are not smudging sticks. It kind of plays on the issues of people into metaphysics, into witchcraft, kind of just taking other people's word for it, and those people taking other people's word for it, and just nobody checking where a term comes from or where a practice comes from. And that was something that came up pretty soon after I started researching it for myself, just practices in general, where most cultures have practices of smoke cleansing, whether it's using incense in a space or using a bundle, waving it around in a certain culturally relevant fashion. However, the term smudging comes from a Native American practice from several different tribes. It's not from any single one, where this in particular, the white sage, is used in, as far as my research has said, spiritual connection. This is not the same as smoke cleansing. However, if you walk in somewhere with, if they have white sage, they will probably have books that you should look up the authors before you read. They are likely to have crystals that they cannot tell you where they sourced them from, or if they were sourced ethically. So why do I have this in my hand? That's because this was given to me by someone who heard, hey, you're into metaphysics, you identify as a witch, and this is kind of held up as one of the most prime examples of, oh, you need to get white sage. That's simply not true. It's like calling every necklace that you come across a rosary. It's not the same. A rosary, it takes the form of what people visually identify as a necklace, but it's not a necklace, it's something specific. So smudging is a term that's specific to a certain practice, not general smoke cleansing, incense in a room. So why do I have two more of these? I can show you this one first, which is also something that I have decided to save for teaching purposes. One of my very favorite scents is dragon's blood. And if you know some of the nuances of certain practices that I do, dragon's blood is relevant to a lot of my beliefs. However, the dragon's blood tree, I don't know if it's at risk or endangered, but it's in the not green section of Wikipedia. I am self-employed, so I find myself next to a lot of different people whenever I do in-person market events. And so I saw this, and it was labeled sage with dragon's blood resin. So I was, of course, thinking, okay, obviously, since that person is here at a market that I have vetted, apparently not well enough, it obviously would be more ethically sourced than just getting it from some random street shop, right? Then came the issue of learning about how much reselling happens at like farmers markets and metaphysical fairs. And not to say none of them are ethically sourced, none of them know what they're selling, but in hindsight, I was more thrilled to have found dragon's blood than I was thinking about asking about where it actually came from. Now this thing looks very, very similar to all of the others. This is black sage. And yes, there's a whole bunch of different types of sage out there. There's different varieties. But I bought this because I had done my research on what black sage actually is. And it's just another variety that you can plant in your garden. And as far as I'm aware, has no specific connections to the same practices that use white sage or endangerment, like the dragon's blood tree. This is literally something that I could just plant in my garden and make more of these in the future. But it looks a little bit weird. It looks like it looks like it's already been burned, but no, just as it wilted and oxidized, it turned black. And that has some relevance in some of my personal practices. Some people associate it with dream work connectivity, particularly because of the black. It kind of bridges some gaps. So those are some of the most common things that you'll find in like an herbal store or a metaphysical shop. And I really like that metaphysics and witchcraft and paganism, which are not the same thing, are becoming more widely available, but people are not taking the steps to research what it is that they're participating in. They're not asking where things come from. They're just thinking of, well, someone I like told me that this is fine, so if your friend who told you that something is fine can't handle you asking more questions about it, that means you're probably making them feel guilty about either hiding more information or not knowing more information. As someone who works a lot with plants, this is something that I didn't really see as a huge obstacle. I had already decided that I'm not going to dive in with both feet into just, oh, it's probably fine, But recently, I have come to the conclusion it's not enough just to not participate in something. Sometimes the best thing to do if you have the ability is to do the exact opposite. So May 1st, I went out to do a much-needed pruning. And I decided to have another go at making the herbal bundles for smoke cleansing. And depending on how they turn out, they're currently hanging up and drying. I will be eventually offering them in my shop to put that energy out there to kind of counteract the tendency that people can fall into of just saying, well, I get good vibes from this store and they wouldn't do anything like that. So, like, no, people make mistakes. People get awkward about admitting that they didn't do something that they probably should have. And sometimes people just don't care. So it's not that your store is directly trying to deceive you. Sometimes people are, especially in like witchy communities, sometimes people are not encouraged to look deeper because of friends of friends of friends will not really like that. The variety that I have here is just regular garden sage. It's just green sage. It's probably what you would go out and pick if you were doing a big old pork chop for a family dinner. And specifically, this herb is native to Mediterranean South Europe and was burned as an incense for clarity, for wisdom. That's why we call an exceptionally wise person a sage. That's where the traditional word comes from. A lot of sources will tell you it's purifying. It gets rid of bad energy, but honestly, I couldn't find any resources for that. Not even when I was looking for Greco-Roman traditions. But even in doing this project, the smell, it comes out and it's very grounding, not in a like dusty, earthy kind of way, but it tethers me to the moment. I have ADHD, so that definitely contributes to that not being a thing all the time. The sage that I experienced, after not having done this for quite a while, it aligns me more to the present moment, which allows me to release a lot of different energy. So that's how I would interpret that, not just a generic, like, oh, it cleans the energy out of your house. It's more of a method to allow that to leave versus, well, it kind of pulls the pin, it cuts the cord off. And also because I've been needing to do a lot of trimming on my lavender, I did a couple sticks from that. You'll also see a couple of those at the end of this video. So this is one I was given. This is one I made a very long time ago. It's a little looser, but obviously I haven't used it. I'm not going to use this here because, like I said, ADHD, and I am not a very organized person. I have been using the potential of making those as an incentive for me to, let's just say, make my space a little less fire hazard-y. I wanted to make those for my own education, but also as an opportunity to offer those where I can tell people exactly how they were sourced, exactly what varieties those are, because I grew them myself, without buying into the, I even hesitate to say witchcraft culture, buying into the culture of just buying a massive stack of them and then pricing and reselling. It doesn't sit well with me. And when I sell them, I will not be labeling them as smudge sticks, even though that's what more people would typically recognize, because that's like me making jewelry and trying to sell them all as rosaries. That doesn't make sense. I've also made a lot of these over time. I'm still kind of refining how I want those displayed and how I talk to people who would like to use these. A lot of people, sometimes just joking, but a lot of people call these voodoo dolls. There are worldwide practices in witchcraft metaphysics that use human stand-ins, things that look like people, but those are, generally speaking, called puppets, and voodoo dolls are for voodoo. And if we accept that, we should be willing to accept that no, it's not smudging. No matter how emotionally attracted you are to the term, no matter how many of your friends think that using that term is okay. To end this more on a positive note, things seem to be going well with the way I did it this time. So depending on how the garden behaves itself over the summer, I may have more of those this fall. particularly of my mugwort, which doesn't grow nearly as large as the sage, but is a plant that I really don't often see in this form. Hopefully things will be more organized fairly soon. I've made some major changes and powered through some projects. I have a couple pictures out at the scanners that I will hopefully be able to show you soon. Like this video if you found it interesting. Send to your friends if you think they won't show up at your house and punch you. It lets me know what people are interested in seeing more of, so I can make sure I broadly overlap what I would like to make with what you'd actually like to watch. I upload every Saturday unless it's been a horrible weekend, but there's typically 4 videos a month. So, signing off, thank you for being here, and I will see you next time.